Miss Samuel Luckhurst from the Manchester Evening News. Samuel, how are things?
Good morning. Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks.
I mean, we have to ask Sam straight away. I mean, it's all about Evan Ferguson, really. Are Man United going to sign Evan Ferguson?
I don't think so this summer. I think that he's been a player of interest for quite some time now, and naturally so. And the way looking at United's front line and the way you can see it evolving next year and the year after, you can completely see him being a player of interest to them and someone who would slot into that team. And there's always an outside chance this summer, given with Kane and Osimhen, although they are two high-tier targets, they're two very difficult targets to attain as well. So it might be that United have to look a little bit lower down the ladder in terms of more attainable strikers, but still quality strikers. That said, I think with Ferguson, it's probably in United's best interest and also Brighton's best interest that he's given a complete full season in the Premier League to see how he gets on.
It's funny as well, Shane. I think, like, you're, what age are you? 29. So you would have missed, to an extent, like the Man United like hysteria in the early to mid 90s. And I definitely think, Sam, in Ireland, and I think, Sam, that had an awful lot to do with Dennis Irwin and Roy Keane. It was like Manchester United became a team that so many Irish people could relate to, and you can imagine, like, if Ferguson became a stalwart there, the difference that would make as well.
Yes, the team are possibly coming over to Dublin for a pre-season friendly in early August, and I'd argue that doesn't happen often enough. I think the last time that happened was in 2017 when they played Sampdoria at the Aviva. And the reason why it doesn't happen is, as you just alluded to, there aren't many Irish players who play for United anymore, which is a pity given the strong connection between Ireland and United and some of the great players who've played for them. There was maybe a slight ripple effect when Paddy McNair, I know he plays for Northern Ireland, but when he got in the team, and I mean, Paddy McNair was never good enough to play for United. He only played because Louis van Gaal had a very curious selection policy with the academy players. But you did have a lot of enthusiasm in Northern Ireland just because all of a sudden here was an Irish player playing for Man United again. And I completely agree with Ferguson. There would be immense appeal to it. You've seen it with other core territories. I mean,
Might have just lost Samuel briefly there, I think, on the line. Just the line seems to have frozen. It's an interesting one in terms of United's targets. Like, Harry Kane is the name that look, Evan Ferguson, of course.
Who do you sign, Kane or Ferguson? Because it's just so different parts of their career. Like,
from an Irish perspective, I'd love them to sign Ferguson, but like, I don't. It's not realistic, I don't think, this season. I'd love him to stay at Brighton.
So would I.
A year. I think working under Roberto De Zerbi again for another season can only be a good thing for him.
I actually would love Liverpool to sign Evan Ferguson. That'd be, you know.
Well, they're already getting Alexis McAllister. I mean, they're raiding Brighton if they're going for Ferguson as well.
And all you need then is a press conference where McAllister says, "Yes, it would be great if Evan played with me again." And it's like, you know, Liverpool are all over back and bringing Ferguson.
Yeah, we have Samuel back on the line. Samuel, I guess the thing is that last night's result secures top four for Manchester United for next season. So again, makes it easier to bring in targets. Interesting reading Eric Ten Hag's comments afterwards. I think he was reminded Arsenal had a tendency to be satisfied finishing for top four, and his response, not good enough for me. So clearly, albeit he's delighted with the top four, not resting on his laurels there.
No, he even said, quote, "We need better players," which no United fan would dispute that. And certainly looking again at that performance last night, I think I said to my colleague maybe about 10 seconds before the goal went in, the second goal, and I said Sancho and Martial have been United's weakest players again, and then one gets the assist and one gets the goal. But it was pretty straightforward stuff from Casemiro's pass, and players like Sancho and Martial. I think the Sevilla defeat, as bad as it was for United, I think that could be one of the best things that happens to them, because not only did it take them out of the Europa League, and really looking ahead to that FA Cup final next week, if they had a Europa League final in the middle of it, that would have compromised the build-up and the preparations. But also that was a night where squad players were starting in the absence of first teamers, and it just confirmed what everyone knew, that a lot of those squad players are not up to it. Martial is certainly not up to it. That's why they want a striker. Sancho, the club looks too big for him. In recent weeks, the £80 million captain has not even come into the conversation when it comes to playing whether he plays at centre half. And if Harry Maguire does go, then United would need a centre back. And ultimately, the problem is the ownership situation. There is money set aside for a striker, as there always has been, and there needs to be, and it remains to be seen who that striker will be. That is a priority. Ten Hag does want a younger and dynamic midfielder to come in, because with Casemiro and Eriksen, everyone knows their names. Everyone also knows their age. They're 31. They'll be 32. Midway through next season, and the youngest midfielder is McTominay, and he's probably also the most sellable, to the point that if United were to receive £30 million for him, it would be remiss of them to reject that, because they are going to have to use the funds from outgoings to finance the majority of the incomings with the profitability and sustainability rules. So the prospect of them signing Kane, Mount and Rice in the same summer is just, it's cloud cuckoo land stuff, really. It would be staggering if that somehow happened. I don't think any club can really get away with that level of finance. We've seen Chelsea try in the last couple of windows, but they are under a hell of a lot of pressure now to shift sellable assets, and it has to be done by late June because of the financial quarter as well. And United are in quite a similar situation. Although they've had a much better season than Chelsea, they've got to shift a lot of players, get a lot of players off their books, and there's still not that much of a market for a lot of them, quite frankly. And you'd maybe look at Wan-Bissaka, who started the last 4 games and is probably a nose ahead of Dalot at the moment in terms of starting right backs, but there's still a possibility that he could be sold, because his reputation has recovered. He would improve the majority of Premier League defences. There are Premier League clubs interested in him, and they've shown interest over the last 6 months or so. And again, if a £30 million offer comes in, it would be daft of United to turn their noses up at that. So we say it every year, it's a big summer at United, but this is going to be a particularly big summer with the ownership situation yet to be resolved. So,
Samuel, I know the stats are skewed by the game in Anfield, but Manchester United have finished third at the moment with a plus 14 goal difference. 56 goals is completely anomalous. So is this a good or a bad thing, where clearly they can score a lot more goals? They've gotten their defensive issues practically sorted. Like, how do you look at these stats? Because it's the 56 goals figure just stands out a mile for a team in the top 4.
It's derisory. Last night was the first time they'd scored 4 goals in a league game all season. Their biggest win all season has been 4-1, and that was against Betis and Chelsea last night, of course. Compare it to, I mean, as I've said before, I think Liverpool, when they're at their optimum, they are one of the most ruthless teams on the planet, and United is still nowhere near that level, and yet they've finished above Liverpool this season. The defence has improved, but there have been these sporadic shellacking at Brentford, at City, at Liverpool, to a much lesser extent Newcastle as well, where they lost 2-0, but they were so anemic, and Ten Hag actually bracketed the Sevilla defeat with Liverpool, Brentford and City as well. It's a quirk of their lack of goals this season that someone has scored 30 goals in the season, which hadn't happened at United since Ferguson's last season with Robin van Persie. And a lot of Rashford's goals, the vast majority of them have been crucial goals. They've gained them points, but they do. If you look at history, most teams, they have got 2 goal scorers. If you're going for the title, or if you're winning the title, you've got 2 players who are going to get you 25 goals plus a season, and United don't have that. And really, looking at Martial, he's the number 9 there. He's been there for 8 years now as well. He turns 28 this year, and yet there are still people who are of the mindset that, well, give him a bit of time, he can come good. He really should have been sold a long, long time ago. And the only reason he's probably still at United is because he was unsellable in the summer. And given the situation also with the attack in the summer, it seemed pretty clear United were not going to sign a number 9, so they had to make do with him. And in fairness to Ten Hag, he got a tune out of him in pre-season, and he was looking pretty good. But he's been too injury prone all season, and United are looking to get him out of the club in the summer as well. But again, that's going to be difficult because He's not completed 90 minutes in Premier League games since January 2021. I don't think that last night was only his 9th goal of the season. He's not broken double figures in the season for goals since 2019-20. And you would say, excuse me, that's probably skewed by a lot of the COVID games where you're playing these training ground environments. And it did feel a lot easier for certain players. It was almost as if they preferred it without having supporters there. And he's also been extremely injury prone this season. I think he's had 5 separate injuries. So although his technical ability is good, he is a very tough sell